Good evening. Welcome into State of the Tigers, PowerMizzou.com's weekly Monday night show brought to you by James Carlton, State Farm Insurance. There you see it, carltoninsurance.net. I talked to James Carlton earlier this morning. He is very excited about your 7-1 Missouri Tigers. He's also very excited to talk to you about your insurance needs. You can get in touch with James at any time that you want to at that internet address, carltoninsurance.net. You can also call him at 314-961-4800. James is going to get you the best deal he can on your insurance. And if you just get a quote from him, he is going to donate $20 towards Missouri's NIL efforts, something that has certainly been going well for the Tigers. NIL, also, frankly, the football season. We bring in Jarod Hamilton now. It is the bye week. We do not take the bye week off Monday night show because, look, you don't take weeks off when the team you cover is 7-1 and number 16 in the country. Not a lot left to say really about Saturday, Jarod. They needed a half to beat what appears to me to be a pretty bad football team.
And that's what good teams can afford to do. I mean, if you can, what's it called? Work smarter, not harder. I mean, 100%. If you can, I mean, now that's not what they should be doing. But I mean, it applies here. I'm saying as far as like taking quarters off and halves off, down the stretch you're not going to be able to do that. But if you can get your work done, not have to do as much, I get it. So I mean, it feels good for them. 7-1 going into a bye week, going into the Georgia game. I mean, this feels like a much better bye week than last year when I think they were 2-4. So I'm happier too. If I'm going to work, at least they're good. They're in the bye week.
Well, and look, I do want to say there are days I work a full day, but I'll take all the half days I can get, man. I can get a lot of things done in half a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you can get it done, amen. Hey, they want to invite you guys, throw up your comments, your questions, whatever you got. We'll get to them as the show goes along. We're going to be here. We're going to be here a lot this week. We're going to be here tonight. Jarod and I are going to be here on this same channel at 4:00 on Wednesday, a few minutes before, from St. Louis University High School. Ryan Wingo plans an announcement. I'll be here with Sean Williams talking recruiting on Thursday. And I think that'll be it for this week, but we will see. Just put a video on the front page with Clint Cosgrove previewing that Wingo decision. So, hey, it's a good time for you guys to like the show, subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe to the channel, you're going to get alerts when we go live, so you don't have to know in advance when we're doing it. You'll just get a little pop-up message on your phone. Hey, Power Mizzou's live. Check out what they're doing, and you can come do that. So, to me, Jarod, this is about looking forward. First off, like injury-wise, who's this bye week most beneficial for, do you think? I mean, Chad Bailey's the only guy who didn't play, but there's a lot of guys kind of dealing with some bruises and things like that. Where do you think this helps Missouri the most to have a week off?
3 important positions. I mean, you can make a case for all 3 of these players: D-Rob, Ennis, and Cody. D-Rob and Cody have been playing extremely well, despite their nagging injuries. D-Rob with the calf and Cody with the quad. But, I mean, 1 week of not getting beat up and having to push off those off your legs and whatever you got to do for those positions, that can always help. Ennis a little bit more just because the nature of his injury. Plus, Drink said that 1 week it was left side, 1 week it was the right side. He didn't start last week. He did play 37 coverage snaps, 45 total, so he was in there a good amount. But another week to kind of, you've seen how he played. He played well. Now he gets the bye week to rest up for Georgia. Let me tell you something. I looked up Georgia's stats earlier. They have 9 players with at least 100 receiving yards, and I don't remember ever looking up something like that, 7-8 week mark, and seeing that. They'll pass it to just about anybody, and they'll make some plays. So they're going to need Ennis in week 10.
Yeah, they got a lot of guys. They're better at throwing the football than people think. They got the number 3 offense in the country. Really now, I feel like I said this earlier. you might have to carry this show, Jarod. This is my 4th podcast or radio show today. Like, it's all the same, man. I'm just saying the same things. I said this earlier today. So I feel like if you told Eli Drinkwitz at the beginning of the season, okay, look, you've got to play Georgia, and you've got to play Georgia on the road. You don't have any choices. You're playing a game in Athens, Georgia. But I feel like if you told him that, and then you said you can set up all the circumstances other than that, he would say, okay, I want a week off before we play. I want them to have to go away from home and play a rivalry game the week before we play them. I want the game during the daylight hours. I don't want to play there at night. And just, oh, by the way, like, I don't wish injury on anybody, but if their best player maybe missed that game, it wouldn't super hurt my feelings. Like, in other words, if you got to go play the number 1 team in the country in their house, everything else sets up as well as it can possibly set up for Missouri in this game. And that's not setting up me picking them or anything. I'm just saying, if you've got to play this game, a lot of things around it have to probably kind of go the way Missouri wants.
Yeah, that's pretty ideal. Although I think the next best position would be if the bye week was a week after this game, also going into the Tennessee game. That would be a home game for Missouri. Tennessee's playing at Kentucky. That's a team that gives them issues. That's a team we've talked about, for like a year or two, at least, with me, that usually Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, Missouri, there's the teams in the middle that are just like whatever, that you can just jumble them up. Maybe the bye week would have worked next week as well. But consider for your specific question, yes, everything lines up exactly as it can, except that it's not a home game. But it not being a night game, I think it's a little bit bigger because the sellout crowd at 11 a.m. or 2:30 or 3:30 Eastern time versus a night game, whole different atmosphere, especially versus the number 1 team in the country. So they've got everything going well, and they don't have any major injuries. It seems like we haven't heard of,
right.
There's no Brady Cook injury or nobody lost for the season that, probably would have had an impact on this game. So
right.
Everything's working.
Well, and the other thing about avoiding a night game is coaches and players will tell you they hate night games on the road because they fly in on Friday. Like, they're getting there Friday afternoon and they're doing their walkthrough and all that. Then they're going to be back at the hotel. And if you're back at the hotel, say 6:30 on Friday night, like, you've got 24 hours in the hotel. You got nothing to do. The kids are sitting around watching College Game Day or playing video games or whatever. But like, they're just sitting there all day waiting for that game to start and, probably take a nap or something. But coaches would love to play every road game at 11 a.m. So Georgia and Florida this weekend, I think that's a 2:30 CBS game. So I'm sure we'll be watching that. What do you think is best case scenario? Like, who should Missouri want to win this game?
I can make cases for both. I'd probably lean towards Florida just because, hold on. Georgia is what, 4-0 or 5-0?
They're 4-0 in the league right now.
4-0.
They would be 5-0 if they beat Florida.
And then never mind. I just thought about it. You're probably rooting for Georgia just because they would just have to worry about Georgia. You handle your business
right
in week 10, then that's all you got to worry about. After that, then your focus becomes Tennessee, Florida, Arkansas. But you can worry about that when you get there. Florida, they can mix some things up. But I honestly think at the same time, though, Florida beats them. You feel like there's just some type of wiggle room down the stretch to sneak in and win the division. And I've looked at Florida's schedule earlier today, right in my column. I don't think they got one more win this season that I think they got, and that's Arkansas. I think they lose versus Georgia. I think they lose versus Missouri, and there's another team. They play Florida State. Yeah, I'm chalking all of those up to losses except the Arkansas game.
So I understand the argument for Florida because if Florida wins this game, then Missouri can't be eliminated from the East by losing to Georgia. And I get that. That makes sense. It keeps everything on the table, even with the loss. I understand that part of it. Now, here I go against it for two reasons. First of all, if Florida wins that game, Florida actually leads the SEC East if they win that game. They would be 4-1 in the division. Georgia would be 4-1 in the division. Florida would obviously own the tiebreaker over Georgia. I just think the fewer teams that are in the mix, the more simple it is. I mean, just get Florida out, get Florida uninvolved in this, get Tennessee uninvolved in this, because you're going to have to beat Georgia to win this division. Like, you're not going to Athens and losing and winning this division. It's not going to happen. The other reason I think is I think Missouri will have Georgia's attention. But if Georgia loses to Florida, like right now, I think Georgia kind of knows, hey, we can probably lose one and still be okay. I mean, obviously, they're not trying to lose a game, but they know they can probably lose a game and still manage to get to the SEC title game, beat whoever comes out of the West, and probably still make the playoff. If they lose that game against Florida, then they know we can't lose anymore. They know if we want to do this three-peat thing, everything we want means we can't lose. And I think you get pissed off Georgia at home, which I think may not be a great thing. If I'm Missouri, I want Georgia to win this weekend.
Yes, but you said, you want to get rid of all the teams as quick as possible, basically, which of course, I get that. At the same time, if you're telling me Florida's in the mix, if Florida's not that good to me, that doesn't really matter if they're in the mix.
But if Florida beats Georgia, that has to change your mind of whether Florida's any good or not.
Nope, because what have I told you and told everybody this whole year? Styles make fights. So, like the MTSU game, I like things that MTSU did, and you kind of seen some of that. Now, MTSU, talent-wise, they're not near Missouri, but I could see what would give them problems. I don't think Florida is that good. So even if they beat Georgia, that could be their lightning in a bottle moment or whatever. Everything could go right for them. Doesn't mean they're going to all of a sudden beat Missouri. I mean, remember, we keep forgetting that it's Graham Mertz leading this team, that it's the same team that got destroyed by Utah, which is a pretty good team. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't think Florida's going to be doing all of that, even if they got lucky and beat Georgia.
I'm just saying, if Florida beats Georgia, they've already beaten Tennessee. They've already beaten South Carolina. They would own virtually every tiebreaker in the division. Florida beats Georgia, they become the favorite to win the SEC East.
And Missouri would probably crush those dreams. The same Florida that was down 10 versus South Carolina, the ones that got ran over. Nah. I mean, again, I can back and forth. I'm 50-50. You're probably just watching the game and saying, they're probably going into it thinking Georgia's going to run over them. But if Florida wins, I don't think they'll be mad. But and also to your point that of getting pissed off Georgia, they've already had their close game, which was Auburn. I don't know how many close games they have every year where you're like, oh man, that was kind of close.
And I'm kind of arguing against myself here, but like last year, the week before they played at Missouri, Georgia had like a terrible game where Kent State was like pushing them in the third quarter. I mean, it was bad. And we all thought, uh-oh, man, Georgia going to come in here taking care of business. And they did not.
True. But so I'm looking, it was 26-13 at halftime with Kent State, and they won that game 39-22. It's not the same type of close I'm talking about. They weren't ever in danger of really losing that game. It was just like, why Kent State was more of the thing. With the Auburn game and with the Missouri game last year, it was kind of like, oh no, you guys better tighten up in the second half and the stretches down the stretch in the fourth quarter, or you will lose the game. I think those are two different things. They've already had that close game. I don't know how much of the pissed off Georgia thing would play a factor.
I do wonder how much of a factor last year plays, though.
Well, that's one thing, but I'm also thinking at this point, does it switch from, or it could probably be an addition, but does it switch from, well, this team nearly beat us last year, or do you kind of forget about that and say, what does this team do right now? They're a really good team now. Like, it could have been that all offseason, like, oh, remember this team, blah, blah, blah. But now they're actually a good team. So do you switch your focus to that, or is it, fuel to the fire, however that may work?
Mm-hmm. So we're gonna break down plenty about that game, next week. We're not gonna get too deep into it here, but all right. So we kind of do this every week. What's the threshold now? What's the okay? This is a successful season. From they're sitting 7-1. Is 8-4 now a disappointment?
Yeah.
A little bit, a little bit.
Yeah. What the game? So Georgia, Tennessee,
Georgia,
Florida,
Tennessee, Florida,
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Yeah, that means you went 1-3 to end.
Yeah.
Nah, you can't be doing that. That's out the window.
So
Um,
9-3 is that the floor?
it's at this point, it's kind of like it's one of those things where remember that commercial with the old man and he had the dollar. And he's like, you got to be quicker than that. It feels like
I don't remember that.
you don't remember that commercial. It was just a couple years ago. I think it was like a Geico or State Farm. I don't know what it
Okay.
was, but like 9-3 would be all right, but it would feel like something is missing. Like there was a special season setting up, and you would just hope that they could get over that Tennessee hump. That probably may be that game that they also may lose if they lose to Georgia. 9-3 would just feel like but it would still be good. Definitely an upgrade over last year.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would be upset at 9-3. I
Right.
think maybe they would be like really close to.
Yeah,
But
that's
if
what I mean. Like it'd be like I was almost there and I didn't. They didn't capitalize
but
on
if
it.
you went and won a bowl game and finished 10-3, I think that would
For sure,
that
for sure.
that would change a lot of minds. Obviously 10-2, everybody's going to be happy with.
Mhm.
11-1, everybody's going to be thrilled with. Because that means if they're 11-1, they're playing in Atlanta against Ole Miss, LSU, or Alabama, and I think everybody be okay with that happening. But yeah, I look at I saw something today that projected on a neutral field that Missouri would be a 12-point underdog to Georgia, which that seems about like I feel like we've said it's probably going to be about 2 touchdowns next week.
Yeah. Yeah, when you first said it, I was just like, but yeah, that makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think the line is the next week against Tennessee in Columbia?
I think the odds makers would maybe still be backing Tennessee, honestly. Maybe by like 2.5. I don't think that's how it should go. I think Missouri should be favored, but sometimes trends take a long time to kind of get to the point where you're just like, that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, obviously, there's 2 weeks that could change this.
Yeah.
Tennessee is at Kentucky this weekend, so if Kentucky were to win that game, it definitely changes it. But let's assume Tennessee wins at Kentucky and Missouri is competitive but loses at Georgia. I'm going to say Missouri by a point in that game because it's at home.
Well,
It would be the line.
You said if Tennessee
beats Kentucky, Missouri's competitive but loses at Georgia. I think Missouri.
okay.
I think Missouri's favored by a point when Tennessee comes here.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we're in the same ballpark.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. I mean, if it was me, I think I'd probably at this moment would probably have it like -2, -3 for Missouri. But
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the lines that far out. I don't know.
Right.
But my guess is it may still be favoring Tennessee. But I don't know.
I think you and I will differ on this one. If you set a line today for Missouri, Florida, where do you put that?
I haven't watched much Florida. I just know they're not great. Probably like -6.5.
6.5. They were favored by 7 against South Carolina. I think it's less against Florida. But I'd go 4.5 or 5, somewhere like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Missouri would be favored by 37 against Arkansas right now. So that's the line on that one.
Yeah, that'd probably be a rough one.
Yeah, and look, who knows what Arkansas is going to be by the time they roll in here. Honestly, they could be 5-6 and playing for a bowl game. They could be done. They could be 2-9 or 2-9.
I think they were 2-5, 2-6.
They're 2-6 right now. They've lost 6 in a row.
Sheesh.
Yeah, it ain't great, man. It ain't great.
That's tough.
I don't really expect to see Rocket Sanders all year, so we'll see.
Well, where is he?
He's hurt. I don't know exactly what's wrong.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
I was just wondering to myself, how do you lose six games and he's on the field? I just thought he was getting locked up. I haven't seen any of Arkansas if you haven't told if you can't tell, but tough break for them.
Yeah, it's not great. So we're gonna run through some of your guys' questions. Bye week, we're not gonna probably be here for a full hour. Besides Wingo, is anything else happening on the recruiting front this week? I mean, not that we know of. I'm sure the coaches are out on the road and checking in on commitments, and I'm sure they'll make St. Louis and Kansas City stops and stuff like that. But there's nothing like imminent that we know about that anybody's announcing other than Wednesday afternoon. And again, we will be there. Let's see. Okay, Scott wants to know, if you beat Georgia, can you expect a New Year's Day bowl game? I think definitely.
Well, consider they would need to finish the season out how we expect them to if you beat Georgia, but for sure.
No, because I even think, I mean, if you beat Georgia, like you can lose to Tennessee or Florida, you're still going to be 10-2. You're still going to
yeah. That's what I'm saying. They would have to finish the season still relative to what we think. You can't, falter and lose something weird or something like that. But yeah, New Year's Day bowl game, which in my mind, I probably shouldn't be thinking like this, but in my head, I'm starting to think, which destination am I going to be at? That's
Well, I kind of ran through them today. So I mean, obviously, if they win the East, they're either going to be in a playoff game or they're going to be in one of those New Year's Six games, whether it's the Orange Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, whatever. I mean, they're going to be.
Do you know which one is for the playoffs? Which two are the playoff games?
I knew earlier today, and I have since forgotten, but I can tell you in a minute. I'm pretty sure the Sugar Bowl is one of them. But yeah, I looked it up earlier today, and you're going to have to give me a couple minutes. I know this is great podcasting. Of course, the thing I'm looking up is in reverse chronological order. The Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl are the national semifinals this year. So that leaves the Fiesta, the Cotton, the Peach, and the Orange as like the at-large ones. But if Missouri wins the East, they will play in one of those, whether it's a playoff game or a New Year's Six game. Here's the thing, though. If they don't, like if they finish second in the East, even if they're 10-2, they very well might not get in a New Year's Six bowl because the SEC is only getting one playoff team this year. In all likelihood, the only path to multiple playoff teams in the SEC is Georgia going 12-0, Alabama winning out, and then Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC title game. That's the only way two SEC teams are getting in.
Oh, so you mean the normal
in
formula?
But
the normal formula, just
I mean,
one of them beats the other in the title in the conference championship, and they both get in.
Right. But basically, they got to follow the Greg Sankey script for that to happen. But I mean, that's pretty narrow because Alabama's still got LSU. I don't think Alabama beats LSU, to be quite honest with you.
I've had LSU pegged to win that game for me, but Alabama is just so interesting. They're just an interesting group. I can't wait to see that game, though.
So let me ask you this. Let's say Alabama runs the table, finishes 11-1. Mm-hmm. Let's say Missouri's, I don't care, 9-3, 10-2, whatever you want to put them. Who's your SEC coach of the year? Because if Nick Saban gets this team to 11-1 in the title game,
here's what I was going to say.
I'm thinking about it.
Coach of the year, if it's 10-2, not 9-3. If Mizzou goes 10-2, you give it to Drink for he's kind of flipped the program around. It's got buzz, all the good stuff. They're probably going to be a highly ranked team. They stay probably in the top 17, 18 or whatever. But if Alabama goes 11-1, I mean, it should be Saban pretty much every year. It feels like, and to be honest, I'm not gonna lie, but it's so if Mizzou goes 10-2 and Alabama goes 11-1, I think it'd be Drinkwitz in that case. It'd be drink. It'd be drink because of. I still think voter fatigue. That's where voter fatigue would probably get
Well,
someone
and
like
also,
Saban.
like, to be fair, the coach of the year tends to be the overachiever award. Like, we
Yeah,
thought you were going to suck and you didn't suck, and
yeah,
nobody thought Alabama was going to suck.
right. Yeah, the fact that I think preseason I was saying like, they may lose 3 games, and like
Right.
what Missouri would do at during preseason to be like, we only lose 3 games.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
yeah.
so yeah, if Missouri does end up like if they lose to Georgia and Tennessee, end up 9-3, that's where I think if Saban gets that team to the title game,
Yeah,
I think
I
Saban
would.
wins it.
Yeah, I it's just so hard because when you realize like big problem quarterback, but then everything else still elite,
Yeah,
like
but I
still
mean
elite at most things. But
he's
yeah, I get
done a
what you're
good
saying.
job getting that team.
Yeah,
Like that's a better team that wasn't. The only other guy that I feel like is under consideration right now is Lane Kiffin. Like I think if Ole Miss finishes strong, I mean they're 6-1. You know, if they were to get to 10-2, 11-1, I mean he'd have an argument too.
yeah. Oh, what if it came down to like 11 and well, I don't know. They've played Alabama already, but
They lost to
somehow,
Alabama. Yeah.
yeah. If it was like 11, I don't know if this is possible. 11-1 Ole Miss, 11-1 Bama, 10-2
It's possible.
Mizzou. Okay.
Yeah.
Because
here's what Ole Miss is 6-1. They've got Vanderbilt, A&M, at Georgia, Louisiana Monroe, and at Mississippi State. So
well,
like they're
he'd go
probably
10 and
losing
2.
at Georgia, but if they beat A&M at home, they're probably 10-2.
I think they could win that game. Then yeah, if Ole Miss isn't finishing 11-1, or if like Missouri finishes 10-2, I think it's Drinkwitz's award pretty much.
Yeah.
10's the magic number.
Yeah, I agree. If he wins 10 games, I think he'll win it. You know, and I know people will be mad, say, well, Saban should win it every year. He has the best players. He's done a good coaching job this year.
For sure.
You know, at least so far. Let's see. People are asking for phone calls and tailgates in Athens. Look, we're not running a tailgate. Somebody may have it. Asking about rooting for Georgia or Florida. We kind of covered that. Let's see. Got more questions about didn't see Pete on the injury report. I mean, he just didn't play, guys. They just rode Cody Schrader. There's not like a big secret here, I don't think.
Yeah, he's the hot hand. I think 3 of the last 5 games had 100 yards rushing. He's got 4 on the year, I believe. I think he's got like 8 touchdowns during this 4 or 5 game stretch or something like that. I forgot what I wrote in the article the other day, but he's balling. So he's just gonna keep playing, and he's getting a bye week to rest up. So he's definitely gonna keep playing.
Yeah, he's been playing really well. Kyle says that Cole Kublik was saying that Armand Mimbo is one of the best tackles in the country. Do you think he has a chance to go pro after next year? I guess it's possible. I mean, he started as a true freshman.
Yeah. Past tackles. I'm not gonna act like I've been paying attention to the offensive line like that to know.
Especially offensive lines outside of Missouri's. Yeah.
Right. And Cole, I know he does the tape work, so I'm gonna leave it to him. But he's definitely physical specimen. I did see a video earlier of Armand just running through somebody the other day, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. I've gotten this question a lot. Will game day go to Mizzou, Georgia? So I think it's possible. LSU Bama is that day. Washington USC, I think, is that day, which it's possible, but USC.
I thought they go to the game they cover though. Usually,
no, they kind of quit that because Herb Street's always flying all over the place.
Yeah.
So Washington USC is possible, but it feels like a lot of blooms come off USC. Here's actually what I posted on the board that I could see them doing that week. Like they've been to Bama a lot. They've been to Georgia a lot. I could see that week being James Madison at Georgia State getting game day. Like James Madison's a really cool story. Georgia State's 6-1. James Madison's unbeaten, but they can't play in the conference title game. Those are the top 2 teams in the Sun Belt East. I could see, you know how sometimes they just like pick a smaller place to give them some exposure? I could see them doing that for James Madison, Georgia State that week.
That makes sense. I mean, I could see that. And I don't know if they'll be calling that game, but
no,
just
yeah,
the
right.
game day.
No, that game's
the game day thing. Yeah, I can see it.
I think James Madison, Georgia State's on the CW right after like NC State, Pittsburgh. So
yeah,
they put that one. So and you know it's I said this too. If Georgia Missouri was in Columbia, game day would be here. I think because it's a new place. Like they've probably been to Georgia 40 times. You know, and like this might not be the biggest home game Georgia has this year. So, but if it was in Columbia, it would be kind of a different deal. I think game day would definitely come for that.
That makes sense. I agree.
Yeah. Let's see. Is it an overreaction to say this is the most underrated staff in the country? I mean, look, I'm not going to pretend to know. Like if you told me, if you picked a team and said, name their defensive line coach, there is 0 chance I could do it outside of Missouri. So I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But they have been playing well. And I was thinking about this earlier before we got on the pod, as far as just like, see, Jarod knows CC. I try a little bit, man. I try. But as far as Brandon Jones, I was thinking about him and how well the offensive line has been playing, how disciplined they've been the last couple of weeks. Drink talked about bringing officials to practice. That's obviously helped. But it's just about more than that. We've talked about it this year, you know, in the press box a few times. When they're not doing silly stuff with the penalties, they're actually all right. They're not doing bad. Brady Cook can kind of think for a little bit. I asked Brady Cook the other day, just like, how does that kind of help your rehabbing your injury and still playing at the same time when you don't have to worry about getting it? Because I remember vividly versus Abilene Christian last year when he got destroyed and he lost the ball and it was a touchdown. And that was a week after he tore his labrum. And we remember seeing him go to the tent, and it was like, why do we feel like he's going to the tent? Not to get checked out, but just to yell, because he looked very frustrated on the sideline. Like, I feel like that's a thing. So I guess shout out Brandon Jones for kind of getting that offensive line in order and kind of paving the way for Cody Schrader to have one of these type of years he's having as well.
And I feel like maybe, and I'll include us in this, I feel like maybe we were guilty of being a little too critical of the offensive line for the first 5 or 6 weeks. Like the penalties were a thing, but like just playing and blocking, they've been improved all year. Now I think they've taken it to another level. All right, so I want to address this. Levi says, I'm legit confused why people are still doubting Missouri, even our own fans and media. Georgia hasn't done this year to impress anyone. It's not the same team that won in that. Look, I will agree. Georgia is not as good as it has been the last 2 years. I agree with that. They are still like, I'm just going to, I don't think it's doubting Missouri to say that Georgia is going to be favored by 2 touchdowns in that game. I mean, Missouri can win that game. I don't think Missouri should go to Athens, Georgia, wetting its pants, worried that it's going to get beat up. But Georgia will be favored in that game. Like, that's not doubting Missouri.
Yeah, just because you have respect for someone else doesn't mean, you know, you're not respecting yourself. Let me read some stats for you guys about what Georgia's still doing. Averaging 40.1 points per game. That's 7th in the FBS. 509 yards of total offense. That's 3rd. They allow 262 yards per game. That's 6th. Allow 14 points per game. That's 7th. And they've outscored their opponents 281-98 this season. I mean, they've earned, and they haven't lost a game in like 3 years. They've earned more than enough respect. So it just is what it is.
I think the argument of Levi and some other people is, well, Georgia hadn't played anybody. And that's a somewhat fair criticism. But let me read you who Georgia's beaten among Power 5 teams. They beat South Carolina 24-14. Well, that's not a great win. Missouri beat them 34-12. That's not a great win either. I mean, it's the same team. Georgia beat Auburn 27-20. That was closer than it should have been. Auburn's not all that good. Georgia beat Vanderbilt 37-20. Missouri beat Vanderbilt 38-21. Georgia beat Kentucky 51-13. Missouri beat Kentucky 38-21. I'm just saying it's the same teams. Like and I wrote about this morning, and it's not disrespect to Missouri, but the reason Missouri is ranked 16th, the reason they are ranked behind a lot of these other teams with one loss is that their best win is not as good as a lot of other teams' best win. Like their best win this year is what? Probably K-State still? Do we think? K-State or Kentucky?
K-State probably, just because they were unranked in the way they won.
Right. It's a good win. I'm not saying that's not a good win. But if that's your best win and you start stacking up against, Washington beat Oregon, Ohio State beat Notre Dame and Penn State. Some of these other teams, they just do have Utah beat USC. Some of these other teams have a little bit better wins. Missouri is going to get its chance to get those wins. Just the way the schedule broke, they haven't really had that one that makes everybody outside of Columbia go, oh, hang on. Now this is real. Not bad wins. And look, I've said that I think Georgia's a little bored with the season because I don't think they think these games really matter. I think they kind of start paying attention when they get to the SEC title game, and maybe you can take advantage of that. Look, I don't think either of us is saying that Missouri has no chance to win in Athens.
Right. Also, I want to put in there when you're a Georgia and you're the best team, it's hard to say who are your best victories because everybody's underneath you. For example, the Detroit Lions, they beat the Chiefs. They can say, we beat the Chiefs, which are the best team. It's hard for the Chiefs to go around saying, some similar victories because everybody expects the Chiefs to basically win everything. So I feel like that happens with some of the teams above Missouri. There's only so many more teams those other teams can beat.
Right. Georgia has created this standard that, like, unless you win every game 51-3, you haven't lived up to that standard,
Right.
So, Jason's asking if Missouri loses both Pete and Schrader. They are both done after this year. They can't play anymore. Tavoris Jones and Jamal Roberts both are in line to come back. We make no promises. Jamal seems, I've seen some pictures of him. He seems pretty happy. I would fully expect him to be back. Who knows with Jones? We'll see what happens. But Missouri's going to get at least one running back, and I would guess two running backs in the portal this year.
Right. And on top of that, also, guys, because I feel like it's coming, or somewhere in those comments, someone's saying, well, why don't you play them? You said this before. They're playing for this year. So there's just no time. If this was last year, even still last year, they were trying to get to a bowl game. So you've got to play for this year, put the best players out there to win right now. And I bet Jamal Roberts is happy. He gets to be on a winning team, gets to be behind some veterans who are producing. Like there's no pressure on him. That seems like a good situation for him.
I agree. Christian, appreciate the super chat. How big of a loss is Brock Bowers to Georgia? I believe the tight end versus our safeties is our biggest weakness. Is this an advantage, Missouri? I mean, Brock Bowers he's their best player, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you don't just I don't care how good Oscar Delp is. He's not Brock Bowers. It's like Noah Gray might be a great tight end. If Travis Kelce goes down, the Chiefs are worse. They are worse without Bowers on the field than they are with him on the field. But like Jarod said, they've got a lot of dudes they throw the ball to. I mean, they're having games with 13, 14, 15 guys with the reception. It's kind of funny. Bowers wasn't putting up big numbers the first 4 or 5 games. Then he put up huge numbers for about 3 or 4 games before he got hurt. But it's a big loss. I don't think there's any question about it.
I mean, yeah, like you said with the Kelce thing, you lose Kelce, it's a uh-oh type moment. So losing Brock Bowers, that's something they'll have to work through. But I'm sure they've played these situations over and over, losing a key person for a game or two or whatever the case may be, and they're like 30-0 in I don't know how many games the last couple of years.
And a lot of times, like Georgia fans probably know the backups, but we may not know the backups, right? I mean,
Right.
Oscar Delp's pretty good. Who knows? They might have some other guy because I remember in 2014, news broke on Friday night that Todd Gurley was suspended and was not making the trip for Georgia to Missouri. And man, I picked Missouri. I said, okay, Gurley's out. I think Missouri wins this game.
Who's on that
Nick
team?
Chubb showed up and ran
I was
for
going to say,
240 yards.
wait, could it only be my favorite running back?
Yeah.
Nicholas Chubb. Yeah.
It was. It was.
And crazy how they've had some great running back rooms. Crazy, he's definitely, to me, the best.
He's good for sure. I mean, I go back to Noshawn Moreno, and they've had a lot of dudes. Chubb was really good though. Yeah.
Chubb's guy. Did Dominic Lovett hurt himself by transferring? Well, I would say when you're going to Georgia, the piece of the pie you get's a lot smaller than when you're playing at another school and you're the focal part of the offense.
If Dom went there and expected to have 900 rushing yards or 900 receiving yards, then that just wasn't very smart. I mean, I've got to think that the wins and the chance to play for a title were part. And look, I don't know, man. Maybe the kid just wanted out of Missouri. Maybe he just didn't want to be here anymore. And if that's the case, but I did look up this morning, and you probably know this, Jarod, that Luther has exceeded the catches, yards, and touchdowns that Lovett had last year already.
That guy's different.
Yeah,
that guy is different.
When Dominic transferred, I did have some people from St. Louis tell me, look, Dom's a good player. He's a good receiver. Losing him, you don't want to lose him. But they said Luther Burden is a much better football player. And I think that's been shown this year.
That's for sure. Well, I don't know. I thought, to be honest, I didn't think that was that much of a secret. Like, it didn't show last year, but I was thinking he's a true freshman. But, like, I thought we all kind of knew, like, that guy is probably.
I mean, the potential was there and all that. We hadn't seen it on the field, I guess, is the
true. But to me, if you're a true freshman and you lead the team in touchdowns,
yeah,
you know something. You know how to do something. And that's one of those expectations where we all do it. You can kind of say, well, yeah, I expect that to get better based off of this. So
yeah.
It makes sense.
Jarod brings up a good name, Garrison Hurst for Georgia.
For sure.
I mean,
I was just talking about this recent era.
Because we all know the best one played in like 1982. I mean, Herschel.
Oh, yeah.
There's only one that only needs one name.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So, Jason wants to know if there have been any bowl reps at Mizzou games. There have been a couple.
Can't remember. I think I felt like I seen a pretty big bowl game. Person.
Yeah, there have been a few. I tend to not pay a ton of attention just because
I don't know what it means.
What the bowl games are they're contracted with. So I don't really,
I don't know. Them being there, I'm trying to wonder what do they get out of it, especially this early in the season. I mean, we're in the second half of it, but it still feels like there's so many things that can change for a team and stuff like that. So I don't know.
Jason brings up a good point. What helps Burden is a healthy and upright cook. That's fair. Like Dominic Lovett didn't play with this quarterback last year.
True.
So it's worth mentioning. Think it's worth saying that the Theo Weiss for Dom trade might work better for this offense. It's possible. It's possible. But also, like, they'd be a better team with Dominic Lovett here than they are without him. Don't you agree with that?
In addition to Theo Weiss.
Yeah. In addition to Theo Weiss and Mookie Cooper.
But as I've been saying, Dom playing the slot, you can't have him and Burden do the same thing. You just, Dominant would have had to be in the slot. So Theo Weiss being on the outside, being that red zone threat, that's something they couldn't really, it wasn't the same as last year. So I think it works better in that regard. You can have a different piece there.
And honestly, who knows? Maybe that was part of it. Maybe the offseason plan was, look, we're putting Luther in the slot. And Dom's like, then I'm out. I don't know. I'm just throwing things. I don't really know.
Yeah. But that seemed like it made sense. Like we could kind of feel like he's got to get more touches. How do you get him more touches? Got to put him in the slot.
Yeah, no question. So, yeah, I feel like we are going to have to come up with a lot of different ways to talk about and think about this game over the next 12 days. But hey, that's fun because it means people are excited about it. I mean, I looked at the schedule. It's one of really probably 3 games in the country that everybody that day is paying attention to. It kind of sets up honestly like almost SEC semifinal Saturday on CBS that day with the East in the afternoon and then the big game in the West at night. No disrespect to Florida or Tennessee or Ole Miss, who are all somewhat still involved, but the winner of those 2 games certainly have the edge. Before we go, hey, big news, man. We're going to get to see Kirby Moore and Blake Baker in person on Wednesday. They exist.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. I think we even get to ask them questions.
Wow. Is it Christmas in October, maybe? yeah, we'll get to talk to them, ask them. Got some questions. Been wanting them for a minute, so that'll be cool.
Yeah, so appreciate a chance to we'll talk to both coordinators on Wednesday. We're going to leave straight from the football facility and go to St. Louis University High, but Jarod will have some stuff from Moore and Baker at some point later in the week after we get the Ryan Wingo stuff done Wednesday night. Again, make sure to come back here. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. You'll get notifications. But come back here Wednesday, right around 3:45, 3:50, assuming all the technology, everything works at SLU. We're going to get there early enough, get set up, make sure everything works. And we'll be live here with Wingo's announcement on Wednesday afternoon. I'll be back with Sean Williams Thursday. So plenty of stuff. Just Jarod wants you to know before you log off that David Hall loves you, man. So.
Man, I appreciate it. That's nice. I don't know how many times we get those, so I appreciate that.
I feel like that's the first time anybody's told us they love us on this show. But guess what?
Oh, for sure.
If Missouri's 8-1, everybody can love us on the post-game show.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
So we're going to write the best stories we've ever written, and everything will be great. And I'm going to have to take out a loan to fund our postseason travel.
Oh man, yeah. My post-game write-up was just going to be Dateline. Missouri wins, period. Greatest article I've ever written.
Best story you've ever written. Absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Once again, if you're watching on YouTube, James Carlton's information has been scrolling across the bottom of the screen. James has been a good partner of ours for a couple years. He makes he allows us to do as many of these shows and hang out with you guys as much as we do. Make sure you look him up at carltoninsurance.net. You can also get in touch with him on the phone if you would like to go that route. 314-961-4800 is James's number. You talk to either James or somebody in his office. Just get a quote from him. He's going to donate $20 to Mizzou's NIL collective, but also he's going to do the best he can to get you a good deal. He's going to talk a little Mizzou football with you. Make sure you let him know you heard about him on Power Mizzou. Hit the like button. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks, guys.